Welcome to the Ed Franklin No Limits podcast. If you want to get a hold of me, like I always tell you, it's edfranklin.nolimits@gmail.com. If you'll notice, I have a gentleman here that looks familiar. John Riley is joining me today, who has a John Riley Project podcast. He does a lot of podcasts, actually. I always kid him because he loves the news. He loves politics. If you like those topics, and I think he's a good presenter of those topics, he's not on one side or the other, really. You can kind of tell sometimes when he's on one side, but you should listen to his podcast. So that's John Riley Project. He's on Facebook and LinkedIn, and he's everywhere, YouTube and all that. He can give you more information. But Happy New Year, John. I haven't talked to you well before the New Year came. So how you doing?
Yeah, Happy New Year to you. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, no problem. So I thought I just kind of thought I want to do more podcasts this year, and I thought we'll just do one and just kind of catch up on some things. I told you I have two screens here next to me that have stuff that happened in 2022. And I always like your opinion on things because it's different than mine.
Okay.
So I always I just like the feedback you give me. And, I think people might find it kind of interesting. Are you a New Year's resolution person? Do you do those?
No.
So obviously a lot of people do those. And I have done those in the past. And I have a couple of resolutions that I do kind of use the first of the year to kind of start the ball rolling on some things, and I would say that I'm 80% successful on those things. Right now we're only in 13 days. I'm 100% successful on exactly what I wanted to do.
Good.
And it will help me with my podcast and some other things, but I'm not going to talk about specifically what those are because you'll find out in my podcast, so I'll just leave that hook out there for people. So do you have friends that do that and you watch them? I think when we get older, we don't do them as much, but there's younger people, tend to do those a lot more, I think.
Well, it's not so much that I don't do New Year's resolutions, but it's an ongoing process that happens 365 days.
Oh, 1,000%. Yeah. That's what I always say too. It's not just New Year's, right?
So, I'm always trying to be in the moment, be self-aware, to think and make rational choices at every step of the way. And if I can do that in my personal life, in my business life, and all the other categories of my life, then I'm going to keep making progress towards my ultimate goals.
Tony Robbins used to have this acronym. It was CANI, C-A-N-I. It was constant and never-ending improvement.
Yes.
And I remember that from the 80s, and it's relevant, right, to your life. You're always trying to do something a little bit better, build a better relationship with people or whatever it is. So yeah, you're like me. We're just always trying to make our podcast better, get better guests, all those things. So I guess that's, kind of the rest. I'm kind of a constant state of resolution, I guess.
Yeah.
And as we all should be, we should all be learning and reading and things. I just have a friend that wrote a book. It just actually came out on New Year's. I don't know if he planned that, but I'm excited to read his book. I don't generally go for those sales types of books, but he's kind of he's telling stories in his book. He's a good storyteller.
Great.
So I'm excited about that podcast. So 2022, like every year, it's always, when you look back, it's always crazy, all the stuff that happens.
Mm-hmm.
I think over the last 10 years, we've had crazier years than I can ever remember. And I said something to somebody the other day. I think my biggest irritation with our government and everything that's going on is we've become so separated, so segregated again. I feel like racism is worse now than it was 25 years ago. Looking back, and I said something, kind of got some strange looks in this. I said, 9/12 was one of the most memorable days of my life because everybody was unified, right? On that one day, and maybe that 1 week, we were all really unified as Americans, and it felt so good. Of course, the tragic happenings on 9/11 were just unfathomable, but the way the country came together was so wonderful, and that's how we should be on a more of a regular basis, and we're just not.
Yeah, that's a problem. You see a lot of this factionalization of society. All these racial identity groups, religious identity groups, gender, sexual orientation. We can make the list. I like to think of it as that we're all individuals and we all have our inalienable rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.
Yep.
And I have it, you have it, the guy next door has those same rights. And if we respect that in each of us, then I think we can break down a lot of this collective thinking and really look at people more as individuals rather than a group that they identify with.
Well, and it's funny, and teenagers will do this. They'll say, they'll dress weird or color their hair or whatever, and you say, why are you doing that? Well, I want to be an individual. But then you go to the school, and they all look the same, right? We did
Yeah.
this. We did
Yeah.
this as kids too, and or
Mhm.
guys that ride Harleys. When I had my Harley, you'd ride up and they say, "Yeah, we're bikers. We want to be individuals," and we all wear the same jackets and boots, and we were all like teenage girls trading secrets on where to get the next leather piece for our motorcycle. So
It's
we were,
like in
we
the
were
movie. It's like in the movie Fast Times at Ridgemont High, where there were
yeah,
three girls that looked like Pat Benatar.
exactly. For you young people, she's a singer, but
Yeah.
yeah. Um, so yeah, that's funny. But I don't. I know the Chamber of Commerce after I left, they started a women's group, and I didn't like. I don't like those kind of groups, and it's not because they're women. It's because I don't like identifying a CEO as a woman CEO. I'd rather just say that person's a CEO. Doesn't matter whether she's a woman or a man. Same with athletes. Doesn't matter what color they're athletes. They're basketball, football, golfer, whatever they are. I
Yeah.
hate the identification with a race or a gender um, in front of that title. It just always bothered me, and I don't know. That's just one of those little pet peeves I had. I would have never allowed for that to be part of the chamber, but they have it that way, and I'm glad they do it. They all get along and they have a nice group of people. I just don't like the identification every time.
Well, their response will be, "That's easy for you to say as a
Of
white
course,
male."
of course.
Um, but whatever floats your boat. I mean, if you want to get in a group with other like-minded individuals, that's fine.
Yeah,
If I don't have an objection to a women's group at a chamber, that's not that big of a deal.
yeah,
But when it gets to different people thinking that one group is better than another group and there's a hierarchy of groups, and
yeah.
that's when it gets bananas. So you know in the end, we should all be the best individual we can be, and keep getting better every day, right?
Yeah, best version of ourselves, right?
Right.
So let's go to as much as I don't like talking about this, people that we've lost, most notably yesterday, of course, I was very shocked by Lisa Marie Presley passing away.
Hmm.
And I'm shocked not because I knew her, not because I was a big fan or anything, but I was obviously not obviously, but I was an Elvis fan, and I remember her as a child, right? So I'm about 6 years older than her, and I always knew she wouldn't have an easy life, right? Being the son or being the daughter of a
Yeah.
mega star like that. And with him dying early, of course, then he was elevated to another level. It seems like when we lose celebrities, they get elevated to another level of greatness, whether they
Yeah.
were that person or not. We just do that on purpose. But so obviously she didn't die last year. But um, what struck me is I just wanted to bring her up because that was, I don't know, it kind of hurt a little bit. I know when we lost Robin Williams, that one really bothered me. And I'm not a Star Trek stuck person. Like I said, I don't know these people personally, but when you grow up and you have these people in your life constantly, and Robin Williams always seemed to me to be a really kind
Hmm.
individual, very giving, funny, obviously, super talent, but always struggled, right? Always seemed to he would struggle too during things like that. Um, so most notable. So I'm going down this list, and it just looks like they're listed at most recent. Barbara Walters. So we both grew up
Mm.
with Barbara Walters.
Yeah.
Um, she was 93, of course. So that's pretty good life, right? 93 years of life.
Yeah. She's had a
Um,
great life.
but super impactful. Talk about
Yeah.
woman making, a woman that really broke down barriers. She was one of those people that did that.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting because it's always in the news when celebrities pass. I think the drummer for Bachman Turner Overdrive just passed away last night, and
Oh
then
wow, I didn't see
and,
that one yet.
and then we lost Jeff Beck, the famous guitarist. I mean,
Yeah.
we're always losing people, and we think about the impact they had on our lives. But I typically reflect on it as, you know, it makes me understand mortality. That
Well, I was just going to say that we start thinking about our own, right?
yes,
Because we look at their age, and especially if they're younger, like Lisa Marie Presley was younger than me or us, and
yeah, she was
she,
54,
oh,
right?
yeah. Plus, they had some video of her, of course, with social media, at an event the night before, and she didn't look good to me. She looked, she might have, might have been had some fun pills or something. She just didn't look
Fun
super
pills.
healthy, right? Yeah,
Yeah,
I don't know how. I don't want
I
to
know.
imply
I
that
know.
she was taking something. I just felt like maybe she didn't look, you know, 100%. So, kind of and I don't know if I'd say a sad day. I mean, I probably won't lose sleep over it, which I'm not being rude or disrespectful.
Yeah, yeah,
It's just I didn't have a day to day, working with her. So here's another one that just came up: Pope Benedict. So I'm a Catholic, right? So when a pope dies, it's a wave of prayer and reasons to bring him up and things like that. Um, I don't know how much you know about Pope Benedict. He was, I don't know, he was kind of a placeholder pope, if you asked me.
yeah,
Like Pope John Paul was the I guess he set the bar pretty high. So anybody that came in after him was going to have their work cut out for him. And Pope Benedict, I mean, he was pretty obviously conservative because he's Catholic, but he wasn't rocking any boats or anything. So, and I thought
yeah.
he was sick when he started being Pope. To be honest with you, he didn't look good either when he
Well,
took the job.
it's odd for a pope to resign,
Yes,
before they
definitely.
pass.
Yep.
So that just kind of created an unusual situation. The pope it's an interesting figure in human history, where
Mm-hmm.
they've gone from being political leaders to and religious leaders to now religious, and then having varying levels of influence in society. I mean, Francis seems to be, a pretty sharp individual. He seems like he's a very progressive pope, Pope
A little more
Francis.
liberal than
Yeah,
the average
yeah.
pope. And I was very surprised. So when Pope John Paul died, my mom was still alive, and I was watching kind of the political leveraging of these other people that wanted to be pope because they vote on it. Basically, the cardinals and bishops vote on it,
Hmm.
and the political positioning was really odd to me. My mom didn't agree with me that they were doing that, but it was super obvious they were coming out and getting in public and kind of like running for an office almost,
Oh, totally.
which according to how they're picked shouldn't have been that way. But so that's just I don't know something. My mom was super conservative, so
Have you ever seen the series on Netflix, Borgia? Uh,
no, I am not a big. I don't watch very much TV. I should probably get with the times a little bit and binge watch some of these things, but I would be more apt to watch a documentary about something, which that sounds like that might be kind of a
well,
documentary.
it's sort of a slightly fictionalized version of
Mhm.
history,
Yeah.
and it was, I can't remember the Pope's like Christian name that he took on, but he was the Borgia family. It was right around the year 1500,
Oh well.
and the Rome had the Papal States in Italy, and Florence was a rising power, and there was just a lot of interesting things that happened during that time. And back then, popes had mistresses, and it's something. It's if you're interested in the Catholic Church and history, that's a really cool show.
I might check that out. Yeah. So I don't. It's because I get asked that a lot. My kids will say, "Well, did you watch this series?" And I'm like, we just don't. It's just not something I do on a regular. I'd rather go to the gym, because I could binge watch it at the gym, but I'd be like those kids sitting on the machine for a half an hour. Another person, Pele. So
Ah,
I was never very interested in soccer because it just wasn't a popular sport. But he was definitely a world renowned figure,
mhm.
um, and the best in his position at that point. When he was playing. So there's a movie called Vision Quest that one of my favorite movies from the '80s, and it's a wrestling movie. But this guy tells a little clip. He talks about Pele and how he was watching TV and how all these people were just going nuts, and he flipped upside down and did one of those backwards kicks,
Oh
and the
yeah,
whole crowd went crazy. And he said, just for that one, it doesn't matter what happens in the six. It doesn't. It's not the 6 minutes that matter. It's what happens in the 6 minutes or whatever. You know,
yeah.
for this. So that Pele resonated with me big time. Um,
There's a great clip of and I've learned now it's not Pele, it's Pelé. You
oh,
know,
okay.
because the accent is on the second e, and so
Yes.
Pelé was on the Johnny Carson show, and
Oh yeah.
he did a bicycle kick, over the head kind of kick, and then he had Johnny Carson trying it, and it's just comedy gold if you can find that clip.
Oh my God. So I watched those Johnny Carson clips, and one of my favorite comedians ever is Don Rickles.
Oh yeah, yeah,
He was he would just say anything, right? His lack of caring for nationality or prejudice, it was what made him so funny. And boy, if you did that comedy these days, because they'd
yeah.
hang you by your toes, man.
No way.
I know. Kirstie Alley really surprised me. So I'm
Mm.
looking at Kirstie Alley here. She was 71. Beautiful, beautiful woman. So she's an interesting cat because although she was entertaining and funny, she was struggled a lot in life with weight and things like that. And so you got to get an inside view of, here are these superstars. You think these people don't have any problems. Here's a woman that had definite problems that she struggled publicly with.
Yeah, that one sort of shocked everybody because it came out of left field.
Yeah.
But yeah, just another one on the long list that we've lost.
So this one, I didn't even know this person, this Stephen Twitch Boss. He was on Ellen. I don't really know who he is because I never watched Ellen. Boy, a lot of kids that were, my kids were very shocked, and I think he committed suicide too, which was even worse.
Yeah, he had apparently a very big social media presence as well.
Yeah.
So that I mean, I didn't really know much of him either because I didn't watch Ellen. But yeah, that one was another shocker.
He seemed like a really cool guy.
Yeah, definitely.
There's a couple here that I really know. Queen Elizabeth was an interesting one. So talk about history. Yeah. She was 94, of course, probably had a good life. She was, I always think of her as just being a badass, right? Just like my mom would keep the house in order, even though she was 5'2", right? We were all big kids or whatever. She would keep that. I figured like she was like my mom of England, right? She just kind of kept everybody's ass in order.
Yeah.
Didn't do such a great, her kids did what they wanted, but I think she was always that big hand that would say, no, you can't do that. And I think she was pretty well loved around the world. Do you think that?
Oh, definitely. I mean, she was the queen for, was it 70 years, which I think is was longer than Queen Victoria, which that's incredible.
Yeah, the longest reigning British monarch was 94. She was the longest reigning British monarch.
Yeah, so that was a big event. But we kind of all saw that happening. But everyone sort of figured that Prince Charles would have been king, 20 years ago. It's just that Elizabeth lived so long. So wow.
Well, and I think she was I think she had a heavy hand, and she was very protective of England, right? We're seeing the mess they have over there now with these kids that are kind of, on social media and everything. It's kind of a joke. Bob Saget, this one really shocked me.
Mm.
So, grew up with him. He was 65, right around my age. Just went to sleep and didn't wake up, basically. But you know what I learned? It's nice. That's the wrong way to put it. When you find out these people pass away, you start learning about their life a little bit. This guy was really loved. He was really this super kind person in Hollywood that everybody loved. And he was very giving. He would show up at things that he could have easily passed on, but he was always trying to help out his friends and show up. And just a lot of good press that he got after he passed away.
Yeah, I mean, I just knew him from Full House and America's Funniest Home Videos, but I same with you. I was just really surprised to hear the love and appreciation for people in comedy in Hollywood that just really held this guy up on a pedestal.
And someone was talking about how much he helped charities and things like that. And he would show up and just give up his time so I was kind of impressed by that. And, you never know about that stuff. So Angela Lansbury, and a lot of you people listening here, especially if you're younger, you probably know who these people are, but she was 96 years old and she was in movies forever. And a gorgeous young woman when she was young, boy. She was just beautiful.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I think we all know.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, I think we all know that television show Murder, She Wrote.
Right.
But that's how I know of her. But yeah, she did have a great Hollywood career for sure.
Yeah. Well, Kit likes those older movies, so we'll see a lot of. She did the voice in Beauty and the Beast, which I've seen 300,000 times, having 7 daughters. Classy woman though, like never in a negative spotlight or anything like that. Another person is Sidney Poitier. So here's a guy that probably opened a lot of doors for Black actors, and was a brilliant actor himself. he was 94 as well, so he was getting up there, but the epitome of class, I would say, as far as I'm concerned.
Can you imagine living to be 94?
I can't imagine living to 60, dude. And I just turned 60 in June. So I, and I'm not kidding about that. I never thought I'd live this long because my parents and grandparents did not live this long. Like my mom died when she was 60.
Wow.
So my dad died at 46. My grandfather, he was in his 50s, I think, when he passed away, maybe late 50s. And then on the flip side, I have some relatives that are 100 and that are 100 years old that drink whiskey and smoke cigarettes every day. So it's one of those things you don't know. But we were talking about age today at work, and I saw a meme the other day that showed a sitcom when the people were 45 and they looked 65, right? I mean,
Mhm.
we're in a different time now. People that they say the 40s and or 60s the new 40.
Right.
I really agree with that because a lot of people our age are completely fit and going to be around a long time. And look at some of the newscasters we have that are 72. I think Al Michaels is like 72.
Yeah,
You would never know that by listening to him speak.
you're right.
So we're definitely in a different time. We're healthier. I saw a thing. One of the events was with 2022, or is it cancer survival is much higher than it used to be, like
Yeah, for
wickedly
sure.
higher. Yeah.
Hmm.
Do a couple more of these. This one made me tear up. This is Olivia Newton-John.
Everyone's sweetheart.
Everyone's sweetheart. She had battled with breast cancer and kind of got over it. Never negative in the news. Always just a wonderful, beautiful. Every teenager boy's, fan in Grease and all the movies she did, and her voice was like angelic, and that was a sad one. 73 years old, but she lost that battle to cancer. Another, like I said, that was just one of those people that we grew up with.
And my dog wants to be on your podcast.
That's all right. I can hear him.
You hear barking in the background.
Got Ray Liotta. That was a shocker to me.
Oh, yeah.
He was only 67. So iconic movies he was in.
Hmm.
I remember this one movie he was in. I don't even remember the name of it, but he was a cop that was like a psychotic cop, and he was after this girl. And the guy, it's so believable. I mean, made me crazy.
Yeah.
Anne Heche, that was kind of an odd one. Remember, she was in that car accident.
Yeah, that was weird.
She might have been taking some of those happy pills too while she was driving. So it's still sad. She was very popular. Let's see here. Well, I see some other people, but not probably most people wouldn't even know these guys. So anyway, things that happened to me too. So we got a Ukrainian war. Putin invading Ukraine shocked me because I've been through, at the end of Vietnam, some shenanigans over in the Middle East in the 80s, right?
Yeah.
And then Desert Storm. And then this one was really shocking because, Russia's such a big power. You kind of start getting nervous. They're going to go further, right? They're going to go to the Ukraine, then they're going to go next door, then they're going to go next door, then they're going to go next door. So that one was kind of, that really shocked me. Have you done any stuff on your podcast about that?
Not really. No. Yeah, I try to stay more on my focus is on local content, but it is an interesting event. I think what the Ukrainians are doing is downright heroic. Zelensky, I mean, the guy is no saint, but it's interesting to see him as a heroic wartime president.
Yeah.
And it's also, I think, proving that the Russian military is not anywhere near as powerful as a lot of people thought.
Well, technologically, I think they've fallen behind, right?
Yeah.
That's how we fight our wars, right? We put some kids in a basement with some Mountain Dew and Cheetos, and they give them a fucking handheld thing, and that's how they fight the war now. So, I was just really surprised by the whole thing, and of course the timing, after Trump's out, and then, so it was just kind of weird timing too. One that keeps popping up here is inflation. So, what a crazy year with pricing, gas, and everything else in the world.
Yeah,
just going through the roof.
And it's all the result of the pandemic and the policies the government enacted to try to, rescue people through the pandemic. They shut down production, close businesses, stay-at-home orders, businesses produce less supply.
Yeah.
And then meanwhile, they drop money out of helicopters, $6 trillion of new cash. So demand went up, supply went down. So what happens to prices? They go up.
Yeah.
So this is a totally government created mess.
We are, I probably said this on your podcast when I was there. I'm embarrassed of the United States right now and the mess we're in politically, the mudslinging, the stuff that just went on last week with the Speaker of the House. We just look like I was the Keystone Cops.
Yeah.
We just look like we have no there's no resemblance of organization at all. And it's embarrassing to me, and then the media, and then I'm getting what the media says, so I can be completely off. But yeah, crazy stuff going on in our government right now.
Yeah. And I mean, there's a lot that we could talk about or complain about. But to me, the Speaker of the House thing, it went 15 votes, I think. It on one level, it seems embarrassing, but on another level, it just goes to show you that democracy is messy. And this is part of the process that you've got to work and cooperate and sometimes compromise with other people. It just worked out that the numbers were such that a few people could hold out and get leverage. And that's what happened. Previously, like, when Pelosi was speaker, she'd had all of her ducks in a row in November. So they just roll into January and it was rubber stamp go. So this was a little bit more of, I think, the reality of how democracy is supposed to work.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if it's because I was less interested or less, if I just wasn't paying attention. I had enough stuff on my plate not to pay attention, but it feels messier than it ever has been.
Oh, for sure. It was messy
to me right now. So let's see what else has been, what else. So what happened in San Diego? And you have your finger on the pulse of San Diego. Tell me about what you look back on 2022.
Well, I mean, here locally in our Poway, Rancho Bernardo, Rancho Penasquitos area, it's just been an explosion of housing, with Merge 56 and the Doubletree Golf Course and Penasquitos and Poway Road and the farm in Poway. It's just a lot of change, and we're going to see a lot more higher density housing. And the world is shifting, and a lot of people are figuring out ways to adapt to it, and other people are just downright angry.
So I call on cities in my new role with this concrete cutting company, and I was surprised to find out that Lemon Grove only has about 30,000 people in Lemon Grove. Poway's about 50, 49, some change. Escondido's about 119,000. I went by after your podcast a while back. I went by, I heard your podcast, and I had to go to Poway, and I drove down Espola Road. I was blown away how close those houses are to the road.
Yeah.
I was really surprised by that. I thought they were going to be setting back further.
Well, I think there's going to be, plants and trees and things that'll be in between the road and those houses. But yeah, it's a way different. I mean, they moved the earth, they carved it up, and it's a shocker when you drive by it for the first time.
Well, when I was in the crane business, I used to tell people I never, in the old saying, we can move mountains. I would watch companies move mountains, right? They wanted to build something somewhere, they would move a mountain, and it was always surprising to me. It was blow me away that they could do that, and how fast those houses went up too. And then of course Poway Road, you've had multiple discussions on that, especially during political season, about those places. And I do go to Poway, maybe a couple times a month for whatever reason. I have friends still there, and I go there for whatever reason. And I'm not sure, I'm not used to it yet, but I don't drive through it every day, those homes on Poway Road. I'm still surprised at that hole in the ground. That one still blows me away.
Yeah, that's a disaster. I don't know what the solution is there.
Yeah.
I know that the mayor of San Diego, Todd Gloria, just gave his State of the City address. And I got to go back and go through it in detail because I think that's a good podcast episode. But the highlight is that he talked a lot about the need for more housing and housing, building more housing as one of a myriad of ways to help solve homelessness. That was a big part of his speech. And then they're talking about more infrastructure. But
so I'm glad you brought that up. I was talking to somebody the other day, and I said, I think that one of the biggest problems we have in America that's on the top of my mind is homelessness.
Yeah, it's a huge problem.
We are having, and I haven't seen anybody come up with anything close to a good resolution for this. Because the
Hmm.
problem is that even if you build the homes, right, and you go, okay, let's say we have 2,000 homeless people. We build 2,000 places for them to stay. We put them in those. How long would they stay there? How long would it be before they'd be homeless again?
Hmm.
Even if you didn't charge them, even if you just not that I think that they do it as a choice. There's several people out there that have mental issues. They're down on their luck. There's a lot of different reasons they could be homeless. I and I was down. I went to Los Cratos Milpas the other day down that Mexican restaurant down by Chicano Park.
Hmm.
They have tent cities down there.
Totally. Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't. I mean, are we can't figure this thing out? I mean, look at L.A. and San Francisco. It's crazy how bad it is.
Yeah. In Sacramento, too, the state capital. I was up there last year and huge homeless encampments. And
So do
the
you think
problem,
building more homes is going to help?
that's one of the solutions.
Okay.
I mean, because you figure that the people are homeless for a variety of reasons. A lot of it's economic, for the rents got so high that they couldn't afford to live. So they got kicked out of their place. Maybe they've lost a job. So there's economic reasons. There are substance abuse reasons where their life goes sideways with drugs or alcohol. You've got military coming back with PTSD and other mental health issues. That plays a role. So there is no like silver bullet single solution that you can push a button and it's solved.
Yeah.
And it took us a long time to get here, but it's one symptom overall of a housing crisis where there's not enough housing. Housing's too damn expensive for people on the low end of the scale. And those that are on the very edge fall off the cliff and they end up living in tent cities. So building more houses is part of the solution. Maybe allocating some of that for homeless. I mean, that's something that could be discussed. There's addiction issues that have to be addressed. There's a lot of different things to solve this, but it's not an overnight solution.
No, not at all.
Yeah.
Did you, after the elections were done in Poway, just because that's kind of what you focused on, did you have any more conversations with people that didn't win on your podcast?
Um, just kind of casual conversations on
Okay.
social media.
Yeah.
But for the most part, most of those candidates have kind of gone quiet.
Well, it's really nothing to do. I mean, it's done, but
Well, take that
um,
back. One of the candidates, Delta Esparza, who ran for mayor in Poway,
yeah.
she's now getting involved in the San Diego County Democratic Party and doing some, mobilization of grassroots folks. So yeah, they're still kind of busy, but the commentary on Poway has largely gone quiet.
Yeah. Well, they're kind of stuck. I mean, they have the same problems they did 6 months ago, right? We got
Yeah.
a hole in the ground. We have housing that's not done, and there's nothing you can do about it now. It's moving, so
Hmm.
can't really do anything about it. It's what's done is done. I had the other day someone was complaining about how crowded the gym was. Right? It's January. The gyms are crowded,
Well, yeah.
and I said, we should build more gyms. That's encouraging. We should be happy that people are going back
Totally.
to the
Yes.
gym. So, and this guy says, no, we have enough gyms. We need more restaurants. I said, well, you can't. The restaurants won't come unless there's people to pay for food, right?
Right.
You don't want the housing, but then you want nicer restaurants. You don't want gyms to be crowded, but you don't want any more gyms. So
Correct.
it's always this, flip flop thing. And I just am patient when I go to the gym in January and February. Just do I like it? Of course I don't like it. I want to get in and out. But I'm also encouraged that people are trying to do something,
Yeah.
maybe fulfill those resolutions, or
Hmm.
they're out walking, or they're doing something to make themselves better. Look, the pandemic, we would have been much better off encouraging people to get healthy when the pandemic started instead of
Yes.
locking them in their house, right?
Yes.
We know that probably on average people gained 30 to 40 pounds during COVID, across the US being locked into their house. I drank 10 times what I drank alcohol wise during that time in
Well, that's a
pandemic.
lot.
Dude, I would start, instead of starting at 5:30 or 6, I was 3 o'clock some days. I was popping open that bottle, and I had to address that, right? And say,
Yeah.
I can't do this. Wasn't addicted by any means, but I had to go. You can't do this. You can't drink this much.
Hmm.
And I mean, really, the reality is, I should have been in better shape after COVID than afterwards than before it started.
I mean, it was ridiculous, some of these policies they enacted when they shut down gyms. I mean, these gyms are actually having people work outdoors, like in the parking lot. They set
Yeah,
up their equipment,
yeah,
and they were still being shut down. And to me, that was just tyrannical what
yeah.
happened during COVID. And now we're learning that, you know, we wouldn't have been that much worse off if we had let people remain active, live their life, make decisions about their own life and their own risk tolerances.
Yeah, if you do a little studying, by the way, there's the level of germs in a gym are so high anyway, it was probably killing COVID,
That's a
right?
good
I mean,
line.
it's
Yeah,
so bad in the
that's
gym
true.
anyway.
Yeah.
It's funny. So I have a lot of tattoos, as you know, and when I'd get a tattoo, my my tattoo guy would say you should really stay away from the gym for about 10 days, right? Let that heal up and stuff. Well, I would wrap my arms, right? Anything that was open, anywhere I had that tattoo, I would wrap it and use alcohol and use all kinds of things because I was more scared. That would scare me more than getting a cold or COVID or the flu. I don't know if I had COVID when we came back from Louisiana. I never tested, but I was definitely more sick than I had been in 10 years.
Oh yeah.
But it was manageable. I just wasn't used to getting sick like that. I'm not one of those sickly people. But my wife and grandson did get COVID while we were,
Yeah, I've had it
in a
multiple
sense.
times, and
Yeah.
it knocks you on your ass. And you know, at some point, everyone's going to get it to a
Yeah.
degree. And I think once the vaccine was available, you know, which would essentially minimize our symptoms, then all of the restrictions should have been lifted at that point. But they still never did.
Well,
But
they
it,
even talked recently about going back to a mask mandate in Los Angeles.
yeah, yeah,
They
which is
brought it up.
just, I mean, if you want to wear a mask, go for it. And there's a lot of
Yeah.
people that do, but I just don't agree with the whole mandate part of it. But it's funny that you bring that up about the gym being, you know, this germ, you know,
Oh,
petri
it's
dish.
terrible.
It's like going surfing, like after the rain, you know, when the
Yeah.
water's polluted. I never really thought of it in those terms. That yeah, there's a lot going on in the gym in the first place. So yeah, I mean, you look back in the rear view mirror and you can identify decisions that were made wrongly. I mean,
Yeah.
remember there was a guy that was paddle boarding in Malibu, you know, out in the ocean, and he got arrested. I mean, that's just ridiculous. So, you know, but even today, there are still people that defend those policies, even though we know what the science
Of
is,
course. Yeah.
that it's a lot safer than people were making it out to be, or at least I should say a lot less risky than people made it out to be.
Well, and I think that we were having statistical information come out that people were dying of COVID left and right, and then we found out that it really wasn't probably the COVID. It might have pushed them over the edge, or they were classifying it as COVID because there was payments being made or whatever.
Hmm.
I know we lost my mother-in-law during that, and I probably officially she died of COVID, but I got news for you. She was if even if COVID didn't come around, she probably wasn't going to make it.
Hmm.
Anyway, she had other underlying issues that were very serious.
Right. I mean,
Her
well,
husband, my father-in-law, is probably more unhealthy than her, and he's lived through COVID a couple times. So who knows? I mean,
well, it's kind of like, you know, going down the list of the people that passed away. It's life, to a degree, is a crapshoot, right? You know,
100%. You never know
yeah.
when the day or the hour, and
Hmm.
you always say, as long as Keith Richards is still alive, I am not worried about. I mean, this guy should be a test. He's like a petri dish for
Yeah.
drugs and everything else. If he doesn't die, good lord, we all have a chance to live to 94 if this guy's
Yeah.
still walking around.
But, you know, just to be straight up, I mean, COVID is serious. COVID is real,
Of course,
you know, and, you know, the vaccine works. But you know, I think I would hope that some of the more rational people in leadership would agree that if they had to do it over again, they'd do it differently. But I just thought what was done in the state of California to shut
yeah,
down business, stay at home orders, that was really scary. Really, that was a very ugly policy.
yeah, something we'd never lived through in our life, and hopefully never live through again.
Yes.
Um, I see these kids at the gym and they'll take their shoes off. You know, if you ever look at old Arnold Schwarzenegger things, none of these bodybuilders would wear shoes. They'd be in these little stinky, gross gyms up in Venice Beach working out with too much weight, doing everything wrong. But you know, that was their life, right? That was their career. And I never, so you can get feet fungus. I used to take pictures of feet fungus online and show it to kids that didn't have shoes on at the gym. Tell them this is what could happen to your feet. Feet are the worst, right? Because it's just, I'm not germ phobe, but when I'm at the gym, I'm definitely cautious of what's going on around me. And to be frank with you, I wasn't too hip about being within 6 feet of people before COVID, right?
Yeah.
I don't like concerts. I'm not a big standing in line guy for anything. Especially food, I always kid with my wife. If it's more than 10 minutes wait, I'm not waiting to eat. I
Mhm.
can eat 100 million places,
Well,
but it killed businesses.
it was awful for business. I mean,
Yeah,
gosh, if you were a small business owner or a gym owner, I mean, you just got ruined. But you know what was interesting is that we stopped shaking hands as much.
they
And
still do it. I did it. That happened to me yesterday or Wednesday.
yeah,
I
so
went to shake a guy's hand and he fist bumped me, and I was like thrown off for a second.
yeah. So and you know, it's funny, you look at that as a tradition of shaking hands, and I know that goes back a million
Yeah,
years,
million years.
but in a way that is kind of a good thing, you know, that because you know, people are transmitting stuff on their hands all the time. So that may not necessarily be a bad thing that's kind of slowed down. Maybe a fist bump is all that needs to happen.
Well, I'm not a big hugger, right? So I would go to business events, and some women or guys too are big
Yeah.
hugger. I'm just not a. I really don't even hug my kids that often. I just not something I grew up with.
Hmm.
You just don't do it. And I would make a joke after about 6 months of the pandemic. I was just going to start hugging people on the street. So just random people. I didn't even care who they were. But yeah, I went to shake someone's hand the other day, and they put their fist up, which is fine with me. I don't give a shit
Yeah.
either way. But
Well,
um,
the world has changed. You know,
yeah,
in the early '90s, I worked for a Japanese company, and I would go to Tokyo sometimes, and you know, they don't shake hands. You know, they will bow, and
right.
they present their business card, and it's a very kind of a formal, kind of almost ceremonial process. So you know, other cultures of the world, you know, figure out different ways to greet people.
Well, I was talking to Carson the other day, and I was telling him, um, I said, we were talking about America, and I said, America's not very old. But in the whole scheme of
Oh
things,
God, no,
the
yeah,
U.S. is very young. And when you look at other countries and things like that, and we tend to, and Americans are, I think, the worst at this. We tend to think we're the only people in the world, we're the most important people in the world. We tend to do that. So
right,
as the United States gets more filled up with immigrants, with money, without money, whatever, we're definitely, the culture changes, right? The culture changes a little bit. I know I live in an area that's a lot of Asian people live over here, and a lot of masks over here. And in the gym, I see people wearing masks. And like I said, I don't care. If you had gone to Disneyland 20 years ago, you'd see Japanese people wearing masks. They wear
yeah, you would.
masks in their country, right?
Well,
Well, you said you
whenever
used to travel there. You probably saw a lot of people wearing masks back then.
yeah, it was common when they were ill and
Right.
they wanted to protect other people. So that was kind of a good thing, right? You know, but it wasn't, it was just accepted as proper manners in the culture. Where here, the whole mask thing's been so politicized, it's
Yeah.
almost difficult to talk about it.
A guy came into my office today, and I thought it was somebody else because his voice was a little raspy. And I said, "Man, are you sick?" And he's like, "Yeah, I have the flu." I said, "Well, why are you here, first of all?" And he's in an
Yeah.
office with another guy. And I would have said this before the pandemic.
Yeah.
Don't come to work and get other people sick, dude. Stay home. It'll be all right. Call him on the phone. You didn't have to be here to talk to this guy. I don't want your germs. I've been around, I have 8 kids. I've been around a lot of frigging kids. I didn't want their germs either, by the way.
Right.
I was ready to, put them in their room and shut the door.
Well, you know, there's definitely a certain workaholic or tough guy approach where they want to just fight through it. But yeah, from a business perspective, if you own a business, a president of a company, you have to encourage your employees to stay home because otherwise it'll wipe out 20% of your productivity for the
I
entire
know.
workforce. It's
And I mean, I've been in
disaster.
sales all my life. I could always stay home.
Yeah, of
I
course.
felt like I could work, but I didn't want to be around people, so I didn't infect them. I would always
Mhm.
just stay home. So, yeah, I mean, crazy couple of years. Feels like it's getting kind of back to normal. The job market's still kind of strange out there. Um, Some companies seem to just be flourishing. Others are still, flip flopping. But I used to say when we had all that shit in 2008, 2009 stuff going sideways, the best companies rose to the top, right? They stayed focused. They know it's a long-term investment to be in business, and they stayed, they just stayed their course, right? They might have cut back a little bit, but all in all, they kind of just stayed their course and rode it out. Right? A lot of small companies can't do that because they don't have the funds to do that. Yeah.
Right.
And I got news for you. I've been in the restaurant business from an outside point of view in the chamber. I worked for Pepsi. Then I sold products to Pepsi, bag in a box pumps and all that. And let me tell you, those restaurants, Mexican restaurants, pizza restaurant, they rotate like crazy anyway in the best economy.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
It's
not like COVID shut them all down. There was that definitely hurt them, but they'd always be rotating doors. I used to put a Pepsi machine in a place and pick it up in 6 months and put it back in a month, and take it up in 6 months and put it back in a month in the same location.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a tough business. And a lot of people kind of have this romantic vision of owning their own restaurant,
Yeah.
and bringing their family recipes to the community. And yeah, they learn the hard way. A lot of these people don't have good business senses, and they make bad mistakes.
I did a podcast with the president of the chamber, Carlsbad Chamber, last week, and we talked about that. You watch chamber members come in, and you're like, this guy's not going to make it. Like they can make a great pizza, but they can't do Excel, right?
Correct.
They can't communicate with an accountant. They don't know anything about payroll taxes. They don't know anything about HR issues, things like that. These are all these basic things we should probably be teaching kids, at least in high school and possibly in junior colleges, about how to run these businesses. And we know that 80% of the businesses in America are small business.
Yeah,
or even
for sure.
my number might even be higher than that. But
I think it is higher. Yeah.
yeah, so we need to teach people how to run those small businesses.
Mm-hmm.
How's your sports? How's your? So I saw you had Ted Leitner on.
Yeah, that was something.
Yeah. He's probably an interesting cat to sit across from.
Oh, unbelievable! That guy has a million stories, and
he's been around forever.
Yeah, we talked about him coming up in television news in Oklahoma, and in Hartford, Connecticut, and Philadelphia, and then coming to San Diego. But that guy is unbelievable. But that's just a good example of how creating your own podcast leads to different opportunities.
Oh, yeah.
You meet a guy and introduce you to someone else. And so, yeah, I had Leitner on. He was great. And I, weekly I do a podcast with Lee Hacksaw Hamilton.
So how's that going? So I was talking to these guys at KCBQ the other day, telling them about you,
Mm-hmm.
and that you had this relationship with Hacksaw. How's that going?
Really well. I mean, that's a lot of fun. So we do that every week. We live stream every Thursday at 3, and Hacksaw is just loaded with content, with
Wealth
sports
of knowledge.
Information.
Yeah.
Just so much. So I'm kind of like the wingman. I'm like Ed McMahon to Johnny Carson.
Yeah.
So I kind of operate the screens, and I'll chime in a little bit on some of the comments. So it's going pretty well. I mean, the subscriber count for him is just skyrocketing on YouTube. We're getting a lot of hits on the videos. We take the long form podcast. It's usually about 45 minutes to an hour, and we'll break it up into little 3-minute, 5-minute segments and post those on YouTube, and those do really well.
Now, are you doing that, or is somebody doing editing for you?
No, I do it all.
Okay. So one of the things I was talking about before I got on this podcast was, this is some things that I need to do. I need to start pulling chunks out of there and putting them on TikTok and Facebook and Instagram and all those places.
Yeah.
And that's something this weekend I'm going to kind of organize so I can get that done when I'm done with the podcast. Like my son says, look, they'll listen to you for an hour if they've listened to you for 2 minutes and you caught them, you hooked them, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're not going to do it the other way. They're not going to listen for an hour and then go back. They need some little tidbits. They need a taste, of what you're doing.
Yeah. I mean, it's a commitment to listen to an hour-long podcast.
Sure.
So you get them with little clips, little video clips. Maybe, you get them with other content that you have online, blog articles, and eventually they begin to like you, Ed Franklin, and then they want to gravitate to your podcast. So the podcast is sometimes the last piece of content that they'll consume, because it's the one that takes the greatest commitment.
Yep. Family's okay. Everybody, the holidays were good.
Yeah. All good. We had my son is a student at University of Oklahoma. So he came home for the holidays, and my daughter is an accountant in San Diego. So we were all together, and it was
Oh,
really
good.
nice. Yeah. How about you?
Well, I have a son in Texas, a daughter in Louisiana, and a daughter in Portland, Oregon, not in Portland, but so I had a few. So we saw most of the kids here. We have our 16th grandchild on the way.
Oh
That
my
was just
God.
announced.
I
Yeah.
have zero.
Excuse
Wow.
me. We have 16 grandkids. We have our 17th and 18th just announced, one in March, one in June. So
Oh
by
my
my
gosh.
birthday, I should have 18 grandchildren. And I was telling somebody, it's bad enough that I have to tell people how old I am because I don't feel it, and it's just a weird number for me to say. I mean, I definitely had. I'm definitely not happy about that. It's just life, though. It's just weird me saying how old I am because if you said that when we were 15, someone was 60, they were ancient. They were like older than dirt,
Oh, oh, totally.
and now I'm older than dirt. So, so I thought I'd have, I don't know, I never really thought about it. I thought I'd have 3 or 4 grandkids, whatever, like
Yeah.
normal people.
Yeah.
And we're up to 16 now. So we'll have 17 and 18 coming this year.
That's incredible. I mean, good for
It is
you.
incredible.
Yeah.
It's such a blessing, but it's kind of hard to wrap your head around, right?
Well, one of the things that I enjoy doing is ancestry.com and doing
Yeah.
all my family research. It's a really fun hobby. And, when you go back in history, it was common for families to have 7, 8, 10 children, if I go back maybe 2 or 3 generations.
Yeah.
And so one part of my family tree is it's all Irish Catholic. And there's everyone, I got a million cousins up in the Bay Area. But nowadays, most people have less children, right?
Mhm.
You're in a unique situation because you have a his and hers.
We have a
Um,
blended family. Yeah.
yeah, so I mean, good for you. I mean, I'm happy for you. I mean, it's
Yeah.
gonna make your golden years even golder.
Yeah. So I was saying to Kit this morning, I said, when you think about it, we're responsible for 24 branches of, right. So we have
Yeah.
our 8 kids, 16 grandkids, going to be 26 by June. So we have that. We're responsible for that lineage, right? So we definitely.
Yes.
And how many people in the world are responsible for that many people that they produce, right? So besides Nick Cannon, just kidding,
Yeah.
can't keep up with him,
Yeah.
um, but you think about there's 7 billion people on Earth, and there's probably what, a million, 1,000 people that have that many kids and that many responsible, or a million. Even if it's a million, it's still, I mean, I know in other countries they still, they may be having a lot of children, but
Well,
it's
you're
just
gonna
interesting.
be.
I always talk to people or tell people about that because it's something no one will forget, right? I used
Oh
to tell
yeah.
people I had 7 daughters, so they'd never forget that I have 7 daughters. Nobody
Oh
has
God.
7 daughters, right?
Right.
So now when I say with the grandkids, they're just, and I had this woman when I had like number 4, this woman I grew up with, she used to go, "Oh, you'll never catch me. I have 16 grandkids." Well, the other day she posted, "You caught me. I can't believe it." So, and now I'm passing her up. Not that it's a competition, but it's just funny. So, and my son will have, this will be his 5th child. The other kids, all of them are just peppered in with 2 or 3. So yeah, it's amazing. But the numbers just, if everybody had 2, I would have had 16, right? 8 kids.
So, are you able to get everyone together for a family photo? That'd be
I
great.
think one of these days, I mean, we have had that happen at a wedding a while back, but I didn't have this many grandkids yet. We got everybody in the picture. I have had all 7. When we had 7, I had them all sitting on a rock out in my front yard with Kit and I. Getting them together, it'd be a task, but
Well,
hopefully
yeah.
one day we can pull it off. But
Portland, Louisiana, Texas. Yeah.
Portland, Louisiana, yeah, and God forbid someone passes away and they need to come here. It'd be better if there was a wedding. So there will be another wedding this
Yeah.
year, possibly 2. So we have that going for us. So I get to see. Let's see. Well, I have 2 here, 1.5 because she travels back and forth. I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I have 8 in the territory. We'll say it that way, right? That I
Okay.
can get to quickly.
Of the grandchildren.
Yeah, I have 8 grandchildren I can get to quickly.
Okay,
And
so
that'd be
that's
5
that's
of the
half.
kids. Yeah, so I'm, pretty good there. But it does make you think about what's important in life, right? It does definitely add a piece to that where I really need to get. I really want to see those kids more. So we went. Our next trip, I'll be to Texas, and then I'll go to Portland. So trying to figure out when we're going to do that. But I got to go out and see my son, and his be 5 children by June, by March.
Wow.
He has 4 boys under 7.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And they're boys, like they're jumpers, and
Yeah.
going to go through about 4 couches by the time they're teenagers, and then another
Right.
2 when they're teenagers. So no,
Unbelievable.
I mean, we're totally blessed. You really have to stop in life for a minute and think, gosh, this is really awesome. I mean, how many people can say that this is, and they're all healthy. Everybody's doing good. So that's important too.
Well, I'm happy for you.
Yeah.
My life is a little bit of the opposite because we just have 2 children. Neither one of them is married or has children. And so my wife and we are empty nesters, and
I have no idea what that's like.
yeah, so our house is very quiet. And it took a little getting used to, but it leaves, there's an upside and a downside to it. But I'm sure down the road I'll hopefully be blessed with some grandchildren.
Yeah, and we have Carson here full time. My grandson, he's 15,
Mm-hmm.
and he's like going out with his buddies today after school, and then they're going to dinner. And Kit and I, but we don't have Piper here this week, so it's we're kind of empty nesters for a few hours. But it's different, right? It's different because I still have to have contact with him to make sure I got to probably give him a ride. I need to get him money.
Yeah.
I need to go give him money. Yeah. Empty net. I don't even know what that would be like. So we're going to the gym. So that's my outlet, right? So Kit and I will go to the gym and work out and then get something to eat. But I still have that responsibility to make sure he's in the right, schoolwork and all that shit that I don't like doing anymore.
Oh, good on you.
Yeah. So, yeah, huge family. I don't know. And I just got contacted by my mom's cousin that lives here locally that pretty much all of her family is gone. And I told her how many kids I had. She about fell off her chair. So hopefully I'm going to reunite with her. And we did the 23andMe.
Oh yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
My Carson talked us into doing it, and which was fun. And then he did it. So I've reconnected with some of my dad's relatives that I never would have known without this 23andMe.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So that was kind of a cool thing to connect.
Yeah. I did the same thing with Ancestry, and you learn a lot. And what's interesting for me is I was always told that I was 100% Irish. Mm-hmm. And looking at society now, that almost seems like an impossibility that anyone would be just one ethnic group. And I got my test back, 100% Irish.
That's crazy, dude.
It is crazy because usually people get the DNA test and like, oh, I discovered that I was German or Polish or South, Brazilian or something.
Yeah.
But here I am. I was like 100%. But it's one thing though is you better stay on the right side of the law because now they're using these DNA databases.
Oh yeah.
To be able to, that's how the guy that was involved in the Idaho University killings got busted. So
well, I think I'll be all right on that. The only thing that winds me up that much is driving in the area I live in, but hopefully I'll be all right. I'll tell you a funny thing. So my mom used to tell me how much Russian was in me, right? You're really Russian, this and that. So we did this thing. And prior to that, I had met a woman from Russia and told her what my great grandparents' name were. And she says, that's really Ukrainian. That's our Ukrainian name.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, whatever. I don't know. I don't know anything about that. Comes back, it's all Ukrainian that I am.
Yeah.
But she was right with the name. And so yeah, that thing is cool to play with. It's cool to watch, people get added from your family too. So I'm trying to talk my other kids to do it.
It's incredible. I've learned so much, and it gives you a good excuse for a road trip to go someplace and kind of go visit, houses where family members lived, grave sites, and kind of walk in their footsteps. Like my ancestors from Southern Ireland, they came here and they went to Butte, Montana and worked in the copper mines. Mm-hmm. So my wife and I, we went and visited Butte, Montana, and it was a really neat, we were there for like 2.5 days and
oh, wow.
It was special. So yeah, the whole bit about ancestry research and that sort of thing it's a neat project.
Yeah. And I just to say so I have a really good memory from when I was a child. I can remember back to when I was 2 or 3 years old, and we used to live. And this cousin that called me, my mom's cousin, we lived on her mom's property. I remember we lived in a house behind her in Ocean Beach, And I remember some specific things that happened when I was there, and I was only 2 or 3 years old. And she says, "You know, you were in my wedding." I said, "Oh, I remember. It was in Vista, and I was 4 years old. I remember wearing a white tuxedo with black pants." She's like, "You remember that?" I said, "I remember it vividly. In fact, I got in trouble because I got the coat dirty, and my dad finally said, 'Screw it, just go play.' So I went out. I was filthy by the time I was done in this tuxedo because we're in. What do I want to hang out with a bunch of people dancing? I want to go outside and climb on rocks, right?"
Yeah, of course.
So she says, I am amazed that you can remember that wedding." I said, "I remember it like it was yesterday. I remember her husband, Tony. I remember what he looked like. He was one of these, he looked like James Bond in this tuxedo because he had that real slick black hair and everything."
Yeah.
And she was like really amazed. And I did a podcast with a guy that I went to fourth grade with, and I remember him. He remembers me. And we had a great podcast talking about, the old days in elementary school, of all things.
That's nice.
That's kind of weird. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
it's
anyway,
interesting how, those early years of your life can be fuzzy. And I kind of remember things, but then sometimes I wonder, am I really remembering the memory, or am I remembering a photograph that I saw that
yeah.
reconnected me with the memory? But good on you for doing that. And it makes me think of remember Marilu Henner that was on the
Oh,
TV
yeah.
show Taxi. She has one of those memories. She can remember incredible
Yep.
specific things and tell you the date that happened
So
40 years ago.
let me tell you, if you go to the hamburger factory, there's a waitress there that has that same thing.
That's a
So
talent.
we used to go to church, go to the hamburger factory with 8 people, 8 kids, me and my wife and my dad, stepdad at the time, and she could remember everyone's order and bring it out and never make a mistake. And I
Wow.
used to talk to her. I don't know if she still works there, but she never wrote anything down, and she would take everybody's order, all 11 people's orders, and never get them wrong. And she was working 7, 8 tables, right? And we talked
Incredible.
about her because I had read that about Mary Lou Henner that she could do that. So when my grandmother and her brother were in vaudeville as children, so they would go take like a piano lesson and come back and teach the other kids how to play piano. So they actually performed in vaudeville.
Oh,
So
wow.
when I was this cousin that called me, she was my mom's age. So we used to go to her mother's house, my Aunt Mary, and they would all sing and play accordions and pianos, and we would have these. They were very musical. And I was telling her about that. She goes, You can remember that too." I said, I remember the songs. They used to play pinochle too. After they were done, they'd all play pinochle and get drunk. And I'd fall asleep on the floor. I can remember. It's crazy that I can remember that.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, so hopefully your memories are all good. Sometimes
I
it's
mean,
it's the more crazy things that you remember, the good
it's
and,
that
and bad.
storytelling thing I've talked about on my podcast where you have to be careful what story you tell yourself. Because of course my life wasn't perfect. We had problems. My dad had a lot of issues, and
Yeah.
we were poor. We were a lot of things. You got to be careful what story you're telling yourself, right? You got to tell
Oh,
yourself those positive things. Now, I can't remember where I put my wallet right now, but I can remember when I was 3 years old. So
well,
yeah,
my
that goes.
the
I can't
running
remember when I
joke.
walked in the kitchen, but I can remember when I was 3. Right? So
Well, let's say the running joke in my world is that I can remember the statistics of the San Francisco Giants in the 1970s, but I can't remember the children's names of my wife's friends.
that's right.
You know.
I have a lot of those sports statistics stuck in my head too. I wish I could download those out onto a disc or something so I could remember other shit. I think
Yeah.
your brain can only take. There was one of the redneck comedians said that he quit drinking because he found out in his life he could only drink so much in a lifetime, and he tapped out. He's done. He can't drink anymore. And he says, they said, "Do you regret that?" He says, "I wish I would have drank slower." Let's just say it that way, so he could still drink now. Well, John, it's always a pleasure seeing you, talking to you. I think this will be a fun podcast actually because we just we're shooting a breeze and
Hey, I have a question
every
for you.
year. What's that?
I have a question for you.
Go ahead.
So I'm seeing online that you are presenting yourself out as a public speaker,
I am.
and I think that's awesome. I'm really happy for you. I'm just wondering if you're getting any action or people interested.
Well,
How's it
I'm
going?
I'm actually glad you brought that up. I've gotten a lot of reaction from my posts, both on LinkedIn and Facebook, and a lot of shares. So what I'm doing this week is I'm going to start sending out emails to organizations like Rotary, Kiwanis, some friends of mine that have businesses, some chamber of commerces that I know because they're always having a hard time filling speakers. And this is one of my quote resolutions was to, I've been talking about this shit for 15 years. I'm tired of talking about it, right? I'm sick of hearing myself complain about it. And it's one of these things where I think people don't start things because they don't think they're very good at it or as good as that other guy. But you have to understand you're going to get better too. It's just like this podcast. I looked back at a couple of my first episodes. You know, I didn't have any lighting. I didn't have backgrounds. I didn't have this camera that I have is autofocus. There's a lot of things it does. I can adjust the light. So you get better at these things, right?
Oh yeah.
And I figure I have done public speaking before. I just want to do it on a bigger scale. So, so the answer is yes. I've had some reaction. Have I booked the thing? No, not yet, but I will. As I ask the right people, though, someone will book me to speak. And understand that I'm not training people how to sell. I'm trying to teach people that if they can be better versions of themselves, they'll be better at everything else they do in life.
Yeah.
Mostly nurture other people, right? If you're taking care of kids or your spouse or your employer or grandkids or whoever you're taking care of, you can't operate at a high level unless you're taking care of yourself first. It's the
Oh, for
oxygen
sure.
mask thing, right?
Yeah.
So what we do too many times is we wake up and we feed the kids breakfast, and my wife makes me coffee, and she does all these things for us, and she doesn't really take any time for herself first thing in the morning. And I think she's going to be my guinea pig. I'm going to try to get her to start doing some things in the morning that are more important to her for her personal growth, right?
Yeah.
Whether she starts reading, she reads at night about an hour before she goes to bed. I'd like to see her get up and read 15 minutes before she helps all of us get our shit together.
Mm-hmm.
And that's her nature. But you know, it's funny. Tony Robbins, I've been seeing a lot. Of course, Tony Robbins and every other motivational speaker is out. Like they're hunting right now in January, right? You want to make resolutions? We're going to change your life. You need a coach.
Oh yeah.
Well, that's great. But look at what's happened to Tom Brady over the last 18 months and his numbers and his performance and his everything about him is different than it was when things were good, right?
Yeah.
And when things were level. Now that things have gone this way, you watch his team and his numbers are falling. His leadership qualities aren't as good as they were. So if you want to go hire a business coach and you want to pay someone $2,500, $3,000, $5,000 a month, and you're not able to retain that information because you got so much on your mind on your plate and you're not operating at a high level, it's a waste of money.
Totally.
Save your money. If you can't read a book and get something out of it, don't read the book.
Mm-hmm.
Get your shit together first and then read the book and then take something out of it and use it. But we don't do that. Physical health is so important. Your mental, the connection with mental health and all this stuff is so important to get yourself in shape. You don't have to go to the gym. Just go for a walk or do jumping jacks in your bedroom. I don't really care what you do. Do something. We just forget to do that for ourselves. And that's really the basic of it. So it's the basis of it. It's not, I'm not going to talk. I used to say if I could go to a company and talk to people, I'd probably talk half of them into quitting their job. That's not what my point. That's what my goal is. My goal is to be happier with your performance if you take care of yourself first. That's really what it's about. And there's some
Mm-hmm.
stories to be told with that. And I'll tell you, I've told this story before. I went to a very popular public speaker to ask him his advice. And I sat down with him. I may have told you this story before at a Starbucks. He's a local guy, very popular. And he says, well, Ed, you know what? The only problem is you've never done anything. And I left there so dejected, like, because he had he's a CEO of a company and this and that. He did all these things. Went to Annapolis. And I felt so dejected. I sat in my car for about 5 minutes. If I would have had a pistol, I probably would have put it in my mouth, you know. But then I started thinking about it too. You know, you never raised $7 in the sun. You don't have 16 grandkids.
Yeah.
You never ran a chamber of commerce. You never were the vice president of a moving company of sales. You never did a lot of things either. But you get up and talk. So why? And listen, do you think people want to listen to a Navy SEAL that they can't even fathom what they've done in their life, or do they want to listen to a normal guy that struggles just like them?
Yeah.
Maybe I can draw those people out to go, well, fuck, if Ed can do it, I can do it.
Right on.
See, if I look at Tom Brady, I can't, and I say, if he can do it, I can do it. No, I can't. I'm 60 years old. Jesus, I'm older than him. And he's, you know, and I couldn't go in the NFL and play at a level that he's playing at, but I could start a business and do something I've always dreamed about doing, right? or help that charity or doing whatever. There's a lot of things you can do in life. And I'm tired of hearing myself bitch, and I'm tired of hearing people bitch about it. So let's all bitch together and do something in life. So that's kind of what the basis of it is. So I need to book some things so I'm not going to charge right away, but I am going to charge eventually. Because I know guys I went and watched a speaker the other day speak, a paid speaker. She was terrible. I could have done what she did so much better. She was a nice woman and everything. She just had no presence. No one left there floating. I can get people leaving floating. I get people pumped up,
Yeah. I mean, you're going to be great at this. I mean, you have the right personality, the right message. I'm excited for you.
I appreciate that. So any help, I mean, if you know an organization that's looking to fill a spot, I have a 15, 30, 45 an hour. I can speak as long as they want me to. And I can guarantee you that when people leave, they'll be different people a little bit. Right? That's all we need to be is just a little bit different. I remember my one daughter, Paige, she wanted to be a singer. And she went to, what's that singing show? Not The Voice, but one of those things like that where they go sing, American Idol.
Yeah.
She went to the tryouts and she says, well, my stepdad says I need a plan B. I said, scrap plan B. You don't need plan A is what you're worried about today. That's all we care about.
Right.
You're going to be a professional singer. That's what we're going to do today. She didn't get through the first round, but that's okay. It was about the idea that she went and did it, right? It wasn't 5 minutes. It was what happens in the 5 minutes. So I would encourage her to, not have plan Bs and things like that. My kind of plan B is, I don't have a plan B. My plan A is to do 15 things really good and get paid a little bit from every 15 things, right? That's my plan A. I'm not going to, if I don't make it in public speaking, I'm not going to go, work at Walmart.
Yeah. Yeah.
First of all, I will make it because there's no doubt in my mind. Once I speak at a couple places, I'll go, oh, you got to listen to this guy speak. He's good.
You will, you're going to be terrific at this.
I appreciate that.
Yeah. So when you're out there, let me know because I'm very curious to see how it goes, because it's something that I would aspire to do as well at some point.
And I think you'd be fantastic at it. And the beauty of you and I is we have very different personalities. However, we can come here and talk like this for an hour, a little over an hour, and we can agree on a lot of things. And whether we disagree or not, it's not an issue. It's like you would not buy the same color. First of all, I wouldn't buy a Tesla. You have a Tesla, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
My wife
I would not buy one. It's just my thing today. I would tell you that I will not buy one. And I probably wouldn't buy the same color one as you do anyway.
Right.
So that's the beauty of our world is we all have different wants and needs.
Yes.
And I was telling a guy the other day, I would not buy a red Ferrari with brown interior. I think they're ugly. I'd buy a black one with black interior, and that's okay.
Right.
You buy yours, I'll buy mine. And we all want different looking girls, whatever the thing is. This is the beauty of speaking. You're going to go out and give a whole different message than I would and be just as effective or more so.
Right.
That's the whole beauty of it. And I may walk in and people are like, nope, I ain't listening to him. I don't like tattoos. I've had guys say, I can't believe, you'd put ink on your skin. I said, well, I can't believe you haven't. I mean, you know what I mean? I could say the same thing back.
Yeah.
So, it's just one of those things. I was watching Joe Rogan the other day, and someone says, why would you get all these tattoos? He says, I like them. It was Bill Maher.
Yeah.
Bill Maher doesn't have any. I said, well, Bill, that's okay. That's why we have choices in life. You do your thing, I'll do my thing. It's all right.
Right.
We can still have a nice conversation about whatever.
I mean, we started off our conversation talking about kids that make their hair blue because they want to be an individual, right?
Yeah.
But in the end, you do you, right? So you do you express your own self as you see fit, and you love life, and you pursue your values, you pursue your happiness.
Yeah.
It's all good.
And I really think I fall in love with every person I meet, whether I like them or not, because they all can teach me something. They all have a story that I want to hear. They always, they know something I don't know. I love that about people. Right. And I think we have a responsibility in the world to be helpful, to help people out and do whatever we can to help people move forward.
Yeah.
When you have kids, I always tell my daughter, it's just the one thing she called me about a job situation the other day, and I said, I'm going to tell you to do three things. I'm going to tell you to take some notes, write on that piece of paper, and so you know how to communicate to that person, right? And the second thing you're going to do is stop crying, because you don't cry in business. Go in the corner and cry by yourself, and then when you go into the business meeting, don't cry. The third thing was draw out these expectations. Make sure everybody knows what the expectations are from each party, right? I just did a podcast on divorce. It's going to come out next week. It's all about expectations, right?
Mm.
What do you expect from me, and what do I expect? This is why marriages break down. They never discussed expectations. And then when the guy does something, the girl or woman says, well, I didn't know you did that. I didn't know you liked that. Well, that's because you didn't have a relationship long enough to figure out that stuff.
Right.
And the last thing is, I said, tell yourself what you would tell your daughter, because you'll never steer your kids wrong. You'll always give them the best information you have at that moment. You'll never steer your kids wrong. You'll steer yourself wrong before you steer your kids wrong. So if your kids come to you and they ask you advice, you're going to think in your plate and you're going to say, I'm going to do what the best is for you, kids. This is what I think is the best for you. Sometimes we forget to tell ourselves what's best for us.
Right.
And we just go off on a tangent. So I always tell her at the end of every conversation, my son too, do what you would tell your kids to do, because you'll never tell them the wrong thing to do.
That's good
And
advice.
if you do, I will come to Louisiana and smack you in the head. You told your kid to do something that would hurt them or hurt somebody else, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I know they won't do that because they're good people. And 99% of the people in the world are good people.
Oh, yeah.
I actually say 100% of people are good people. We just allow bad behavior too often these days. We tolerate too much shit. So, anyway, on that note, I appreciate you saying that. And I love talking to you. I wish we got together more often and we can make that happen, because you always teach me something when I'm talking to you, and I always get something from you, and I hope I'm giving something back to you. And I know,
yeah, you are.
When I was talking to this guy from the chamber, I said, look, I know I'm a little much, right? I know when I walk into a room and I'm not that guy that stands in the corner. I'm right out there. I get it. And I know some people are like, wow, Ed's a lot to take, right? I can take about 10 minutes of him and I'm good. I get that. But, that's just me. That's just life. And I appreciate the fact that we can, bounce ideas off each other and I listen to your podcast when they come out, have my notifications on my phone when they pop up. I was just working today and didn't get to that one. So
all good, man. And I enjoy checking out your shows as well, because you always have inspirational messages that makes us feel better about ourselves. So good on you.
That's my idea. So, All right, man. Well, Happy New Year again to you. I hope to talk to you soon on another topic. Anyway, this is the EdFranklin.NoLimits podcast. You can reach me at edfranklin.nolimits@gmail.com. And I hope everybody has a great weekend. You're going to get wet again, by the way. So I know all you Californians like me hate the rain. I want 85 again and sitting by a pool. So good night, and I'll talk to you all soon.